All right, Mech Warrior. Talking about Battletech tactics, pushing the heat, looking at heat and kind of coming up with a matrix, a formula, some sort of mech command to answer the question, how do you push the heat? What do we need to be aware of? And if you have any type of ammo whatsoever, how do we prevent it from going boom, boom? Now, out of all the Battletech podcasts that I push out, I'm trying to share my experiences. I'm trying to make a contribution to the Battletech community, which is just amazingly strong up here on YouTube. There is fantastic content. I love the analysis of the mechs and scenarios that you guys push out, and totally giving total credit. There's a lot of great ideas that I've incorporated into my own games, and I try to live up to that high standard that you have set. That said, I probably should not be making this podcast because I'm a gambler by nature. If we had to map my alignment to AD&D, I'd be chaotic neutral. I'm a glory hound on the tabletop. I want personal glory. That's not to say I'm not a team player, but if there's glory to be won, if there's martial glory to be won, that's the 40K, Warhammer 40,000 influence, the Cornate glory on the table, bolt, pistol, and chainsword, taking risks, all that. I will always push the heat. I mean, my mech, my awesome mech, literally the awesome type mech, I've got like that whole setup disabled where there's like no override to the fusion engine, and I'm just going to push that heat, and I'm blasting those multiple PPCs a turn, and I'll roll those dice. I'll roll those dice for a shutdown. I'll roll those dice and see what happens on there. So in exploring that, when do we push the heat? Now, the interesting thing about Battletech is we try to put things in groups, mechs, classifications, roles, as a way for a new player to begin to understand the interaction of these machines and the interaction of these mechs. But on the opposite side, at some point we need to break that formula because the diversity of mechs in Battletech, vehicles, infantry, tactics, air support, off-table artillery, total warfare, there's something to kind of break that rule, the converse of it, every single time. And that is before we even get into running variants or custom building mechs. I mean, there is a lot in the mech toolkit to keep things going and to keep things active. So we're going to talk in a generalized way, and in the comments we'll kind of break that down. So certainly with most light mechs, you don't have to worry about heat as much. They don't have the tonnage to pack multiple heat sinks in most cases, but they're also only mounting maybe one primary weapon and a few very, very light, a short-range missile pack or possibly machine guns type weaponry to push forward. So heat isn't always a problem with light mechs. As we move into the medium mechs, and obviously a light medium mech tonnage versus a heavy tonnage light mech, that line, I know Battletech has the cutoff in the rules and for the battle value, but sometimes those lines get a little bit blurred across the weight classes. It's like, I'm 180 pounds in one weight class, and I'm just on that cusp, but you're like 178, so you're in the lower category. I mean, really? On there? So similar to Battletech. When we move into the medium mechs, well, now we have a little more tonnage to work with, so we see an increase in heat sinks, but now we begin to see a primary weapon, maybe like a PPC, some primary support weapons, maybe like an LRM-10, and a couple of secondary weapons that are not things like machine guns. We're seeing like medium lasers, things that can put out some decent damage. We need to kind of watch heat, but we'll see where it goes. That's not to say you can't get in trouble. Now we move into the heavy and the assault mechs. This is where the heat is going to pile up really, really fast. Even if you have a cooler running mech, meaning it might be autocannon based, it has significant heat sinks, there's only a few mechs where you never have to really worry about heat in the heavy and the assault class. Two things that come to my mind, and in the comments, your thought on I don't even need to track heat. The Grasshopper, fantastic mech. The Hopper looks a little weird, but it's a win-win-win across everything, and that podcast is up in the archive and the link to my blog. If you need to worry about taking a mech and you don't know what, Catapult or the Grasshopper. And then we've got stuff like the Charger, stock Charger. A lot of small lasers on there. The speediest assault mech out there, we don't have to worry about heat. So there are a few outliers, but with the heavy and the assault mechs, you're going to be firing everything off. You're going to want to fire everything off, and you need to make sure when you make it to that danger close, that critical mass moment. I define that in Battletech as 3 or 4, maybe 5 hexes away, where you and your opponent, whether it's mech to mech or multiple mechs to multiple mechs, there's no more maneuvering, there's no more turning back. You are face to face, all guns facing forward, all guns to bear, except for that Battle Master who's got and the Dragon who's got the medium lasers pointing in the back that you forget about halfway through the game, and you've got these like little couple of armor bubble light mechs harassing you in the back. You can't turn around, and you've been playing the game for years, and you realize, like, wait a second, I've got lasers in the back there. Dust them off, start rolling those dice on there. So we want to make sure when we get to that danger close level, because I can't break engagement, I can't turn and run away, I can only backpedal, and I can only do that so fast by walking. We want it to be correct. So as we're approaching, and part of this approach depends on, literally approach, my mechs are approaching your approach, your mechs are approaching mine, we're looking to meet. Are we playing on a hex map, and are we playing on a wargaming table or multiple hex maps? That in a very subtle way influences heat tremendously. By its nature, the hex maps tend to have groupings of terrain, so they kind of guide the flow of the game to where you want to scoot and shoot, go all around to different places. But by artificially shrinking the battlefield, they bring you to bear very, very quick. And you need to kind of know where you're going to commit and when you're going to commit, because there's not a lot of room to maneuver, compared to, say, a 6x3 or whatever large Warhammer 40K type gaming table that's out there. You can begin to make an approach. You realize, okay, look, I'm taking a lot of indirect fire, or there's a bunch of warriors, helicopters, VTOLs kind of coming up the flank. Maybe I'll start pulling back, see what we can do. Hex map, you're just there, boom, 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 engaged, ready to go. So on the hex map, at long range, we start opening up with LRM packs, maybe PPCs. If it is a wargaming table and you have maneuverability, I will start firing. Well, rule number 1 of Battletech, the dice are the dice. As soon as you're in range, you start firing something. Whether that's just an autocannon 2 or 5, or if it's a longbow, do you make the decision to do 2 LRM 20 packs, or maybe 1, or do you just open up on the 220s and the 25s? I open up on everything. If we have more room to maneuver, you have a longer time to approach and deal with the heat management. So I tend to be a little bit more aggressive. If we're on a hex map, I need to see what's in play. I'll be a little bit more conservative, but that's really just in the numbers to open up firing. I am a firm believer, as soon as you're in range, do not hold back. You never know. Perfect example, because we've got to give that Battletech example of Trial of Possession to see who goes first, who leads the attack in the inner sphere. Clan Jade Falcon, my summoner, I've run 2 summoners, codename Thor, codename Loki. And Thor was right to challenge, see what we can do. And I was going up against Daishi, I think, so pretty strong on there. But I was like, hey, I'll get up, we'll see what we can do. I took a missile hit, short-range missile hit. 2 missiles connect. 1 hits on the arm. Okay, okay. 1 hits center torso. 1-1. 2 snake eyes. Okay. Roll for crit. Confirm crit. Roll for crit. Confirmation. 3. Roll for 3. Engine. Mech falls down. That's never happened. I mean, I've had a headshot. I've had some pretty crazy stuff, but I'm like, okay, well, let's just reset that Trial of Possession, because we've got another 5 hours of Battletech that we were going to play. So let's kind of push through there. I illustrate that because the odds of that, and someone will crunch those numbers, that percent, you never know. That's the beauty of Battletech. Just start firing as soon as you can. Now we get to, little side tangent, right? Now we get to that middle range where certainly your opponent is stacking the movement modifiers, but now your range modifiers are starting to come down. And at this point, on a tactical note, I like to switch, if I can, from walking to running, because I want to really start cutting those modifiers. So when I'm shooting the large lasers and the medium lasers at long or medium range, there's enough diversity, if it's a heavy or an assault mech, to hit. This is where I still want to watch that heat, even though I push it like crazy. Tactically, we want to start to watch this, because we're going to close very, very fast, and there's going to be a lot of weapons opening up. As we creep up on the heat, the challenge, of course, is it cuts down on your movement. So at long range, I don't want to be firing so much that it cuts down on my movement, because then that mech that's overheating, and it doesn't seem like much, a movement point here, a movement point there. But that mech, as you're closing, especially if it's a wargaming table, it's going to start to lag behind a little bit. This idea of overlapping bubbles, threat bubbles, fields of fire between each mech, each unit, it's going to start to pull apart. Now you have to make the decision, keep the rest of my entire lance and force back. Well, then my opponent's going to be able to occupy the center of the table, which is vital in any war game sooner. Or do I let that mech kind of hang back a little bit? Well, now it might get isolated. And if there's some outflankers or there's some outriders, some hovers, I love taking hovercrafts with a lot of short-range missiles to just kind of go blow right up there. Then we got to start looking at that. So as we close, now we can be a little more aggressive with heat, because as our mechs close to medium range and short range, if I move less in terms of movement, I'm not going to get penalized as much, because we're already, I can already see your fuzzy dice hanging in your mech's cockpit. So we're like ready to go. We're closer. Likewise, as you increase the heat, now you get to deal with things like the shooting modifiers being affected for the heat buildup. Your targeting computer, or just, you get like totally just claustrophobic in there with your pilot, your mech warrior, whatever it's going to be in the narrative, however you want to imagine it on there. That becomes less of a challenge also at the medium and shorter ranges, because the movement modifiers at this point, you're walking or you're not moving. Hopefully I'm in cover. Likewise, we're at short range or point blank, most likely on there. Not that I want modifiers, of course, but we have to look and say, if I fire 2 medium lasers with no heat penalty, or I can fire 4 right now and possibly take a penalty next turn, and then next turn still be able to fire 2 or 3, it might be worth it with that. You really have to see, because you've locked that close to close. As we move to the next spectrum in the heat scale, well, now this is where the dice come in. This is where the gambling comes in, and how far you want to push it for personal glory. Depending on your mech, you might blow up. You might push that heat. You might shut down. And the irony being, where I don't have to worry about the movement or the shooting modifiers, the shutdown modifiers are a major, major problem, especially if you're danger close, where you've got some heavy and assault mechs with battle fists and fists, and they're going to charge and they're going to punch. That's going to be, they're just going to run up and they're going to punch you, and they probably might still miss. Who the heck knows, right? That's why I have a phobia of kicking. A game a while ago, I've got my Atlas. Got the Atlas on the table. I run up, and I think it was some sort of worthless medium mech. I'm like, I'm just going to kick it. I calculate the damage. I crunch the numbers. I'm like, I'll kick the leg off, and it'll take half the torso off, and it'll take the arm off. So you know what? I'm going to kick that mech. I miss. I fall down. I take some damage. Okay, fine. Try to get up next turn. Can't get up. Try to get up turn after that. Can't get up. Try to get up turn after that. Can't get up. I just give up. At this point, I'm completely surrounded. And my opponent's got me completely surrounded, and it's like, I'm sorry, Fritz. I got to do this. I got to start like shooting at you and stepping on you, and got to go to WrestleMania here on Battletech. And I'm like, all right. I mean, look, you got to. I can't get up. 3 turns on there. I eventually did get up, but I took a beating with that. I don't know what the heck happened there, but we definitely don't want to shut down. So we need to be a little bit more conservative as we close. Now we get into the camp before the kind of the final capstone. Are you running an energy mech, Well, if you are, you don't have to worry about ammo explosion. Or are you running a mixed mech with ammunition in there? You could dump it out as you go. I know that's certainly possible. There's other things to consider, but the challenge here, of course, when you push it, is exploding. It will literally gut your mech. The first time I dealt with ammo explosion, I remember I think it wasn't a Warhammer. It was some mech that just had machine gun ammo in there. It might have been my Thunderbolt. I've been running the T-Bolt for a long time, and maybe I think I fired off all the missiles and everything, and you've just got so many machine gun rounds, and there wasn't any infantry, and you're never going to run out of it anyway. It blew up, and I'm like, well, I've never had that happen before. This was many, many years ago. So we start looking. I look up the damage, and it's just something like 400 bubbles of ammo, bubbles of armor on there, just insane. Like every single bubble on there, it's literally like smoking mech boots on the ground. And I'm like, that can't be right. The ammo rules for explosion in early tech, Intersphere tech, are just absolutely brutal on there. You might not want to risk that. I mean, yes, you could get hit, ammo could blow up with a crit, but certainly with heat, it's a possibility. So you need to kind of consider, there's some people that will run energy mechs aggressively just for that. There's some people that will say on my mediums and lower spectrum heavy mechs, which are really kind of like medium mechs on steroids, they'll do the ammo mechs or a mix of energy and ammo. But on the true heavy mechs and assault mechs, really looking for energy based, because you're going to get up there and you're going to have to deal with that, and you're going to want to fire all your weapons. So when do you really push the heat and really push the alpha? Well, there are those moments where there is glory, even if the odds are small. If I'm going toe to toe with a heavy or an assault mech and it's pretty beat up, right? I'm into internals. There's a chance I can throw an engine hit on, or even better, a gyro hit, or maybe get lucky and just now hit some ammo, or even just blow a limb off on there, an arm opening up that side of the mech, or better yet, a leg, then I will tend to push it. I'll risk that. Maybe it'll happen, maybe it won't. There's the opportunity with that. How much to open up on the alpha and push it and maybe get a shutdown, it depends on how beat up my opponent's mech is and where they are in terms of other mechs surrounding me. The final option, the doomsday option. Knowing, I never say never, and you always want to fight the game out, and you always want to play the game out, but there are times where your mech is just so beat up, and you're not going to be able to surrender. Go out in a blaze of glory. Go out for a chance to really, really possibly cripple my opponent. An example of that, I was playing my Stalker, and the Stalker was right up there. Stalker's a great mech, right up there in the mix of everything. And I was playing the Stalker correct, kind of on the way in, stomping on the way in. I think this was Mr. Stompy, my Stalker. Open up with the LRMs, then we switched to the large lasers, and then kind of in tandem and pushing that. I was soaking up a lot of damage, and true to the brochure, it just keeps coming and going and going and going. But I was going up against 3 or 4 or 5 other mechs as kind of like this holding. Wanted to hold them back, and I was dishing out some decent damage. It allowed my Hunchback, it allowed a couple of other mechs to get in there and try to do what they had to do for the mission. I don't know how much longer I was going to last. I really don't. I was into internals. Roll for crit. I'm sweating it out. I'm like, why do I play this game? I can't take this stress level, with walking ammo in there. And I knew I was pretty sure, based on the averages of the dice gods, that next turn this mech was going to go down. So in that case, when we look at something like the Stalker, up close, point blank, fire everything. Fire off the LRMs. Take the, I'm at point blank. I need 12s to hit because you're moving. Take the under minimum penalties on all that. And if you have such a mech where you're surrounded, you're probably going to go down next turn. Not like a turn or two from now. Not we'll take a risk. Crunching the numbers, you're going to go down. Then, a mech warrior would probably never do this. He'd try to surrender on there. The clans might let you just for honor. I don't want to be Desra, but looking at that, what I did and what I will often always do is fire everything off at the weakest mech that's there, hoping I can take it out or hoping I can cripple it. Because the idea is I'm going to lose, in this case, the Stalker anyway. If I fire everything off, I might at least take you with me. Fire everything off, heat goes through the roof. Of course, there's going to be ammo explosions and shutdowns, and the mech blew up on there. I think another time maybe it shut down. Blowing that up, just for the lulls, we kind of calculate all the ammo. It's just there's just absolutely nothing left on there. So heat is important. And like everything in Battletech, even if you play conservative, there is a conservative bracket of when you can or when you should push things to kind of bring those modifiers down or throw enough dice down on the table. And knowing how that relates to heat is very, very important on there. And the classifications of the mechs and how you begin to approach those mechs. Your thought on heat. And I'm just curious in the comments, do you generally play it conservative with the heat, meaning you track it, you're aware of it? A great little kind of Battletech hack is to use a D20 for the heat and kind of flip that around on there. So you always keep it low digits, or you always keep it under the minimum, or you never generate heat? Or are you like me, where if that opportunity presents itself, we'll roll those dice. We'll see what happens on there, and we'll push it for any tactical or perceived tactical glory that we can get.